April 25th, 1915. Dawn. Turkish cliffs rise above a narrow beach. British, Australian, and New Zealand troops wade toward shore. They expect light resistance. Machine guns open fire from above. Men fall before they reach the sand. Bodies float in crimson water. The beach becomes a killing field. By nightfall, thousands are dead. The man who planned this invasion sits in London, 40 years old, brilliant, ambitious, First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill. He promised this would end the war. Instead, it destroys him. This is not the Churchill you know, not the hero, not the legend. This is the story of how total failure forged the man who would save the world. The Golden Boy. Churchill is untouchable. Born into aristocracy, grandson of a duke, son of a famous politician. But his rise was not handed to him. He earned it through ambition and risk. War correspondent at 21, captured in South Africa, escaped from prison, became an international celebrity at 25, member of parliament at 26, cabinet minister at 33, First Lord of the Admiralty at 37. Meteoric does not begin to describe it. Churchill loves war, not the death, but the clarity, the purpose, the chance to prove himself against impossible odds. He has always succeeded, always, until Gallipoli. The plan. August 1914. World War I erupts. Within weeks, the Western Front becomes a nightmare of trenches and barbed wire. Millions of men dig into mud from Belgium to Switzerland. Neither side can advance. Every attack is slaughter. Churchill watches in horror as British generals throw wave after wave of soldiers at German machine guns. Thousands die for yards of worthless ground. There must be another way. He studies a map. If the Western Front is deadlocked, attack somewhere else. Turkey has just entered the war on Germany's side. The Ottoman Empire controls the Dardanelles, the narrow strait connecting the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. If Britain can force that strait, everything changes. Reach Russia through the Black Sea, knock Turkey out of the war, threaten Germany from the south, end the stalemate. Churchill becomes obsessed. He presents his plan to the War Cabinet with absolute conviction. A bold naval assault. Force the Dardanelles with battleships. Shell Constantinople into submission. Turkey surrenders. War over. The admirals are skeptical. The generals lukewarm. But Churchill is magnetic, passionate, utterly convincing. Prime Minister Asquith gives approval. Churchill has his chance to win the war. What he does not know is that he is about to make every mistake a leader can make, and thousands of young men will pay the price. The first mistake, February 1915. The Royal Navy begins. Churchill's plan is straightforward. Battleships will blast through Turkish defenses, sweep aside mines, sail to Constantinople. No large infantry invasion needed, just naval power. The first attacks go well. British ships bombard Turkish forts. Some are destroyed. Churchill is ecstatic. See, he tells doubters, it is working. But he has made his first critical error. He has telegraphed his intentions. The Turks know exactly where the attack is coming. They have weeks to prepare, and prepare they do. They lay hundreds of additional mines, position mobile howitzers on the cliffs, turn the strait into a death trap. Churchill does not know this. He is in London, confident, certain of victory. The disaster, March 18th, 1915. The main naval assault. 16 Allied battleships enter the Dardanelles. What Churchill does not know is waiting for them. HMS Irresistible hits a mine, sinks. HMS Ocean hits a mine, sinks. HMS Bouvet, a French battleship, hits a mine and capsizes in 90 seconds. 600 men drown. Within hours, 1/3 of the attacking fleet is destroyed or crippled. The naval assault is a catastrophe. In London, Churchill receives the reports. He cannot believe it. We were so close, he insists. One more push and we break through. But the Admiralty has lost its nerve. No more battleships will be risked. Churchill makes his second catastrophic mistake. He doubles down. If the Navy cannot force the strait, the Army will. Troops will storm the Gallipoli Peninsula, capture the high ground, silence the Turkish guns. Then the Navy can pass through. He gives the commanders weeks when they need months. Nobody knows the terrain. Nobody knows Turkish troop strength. Nobody has accurate maps. But Churchill is impatient, convinced that delay means defeat. Attack, he urges, before the Turks can reinforce. The Killing Field, April 25, 1915. 75,000 Allied troops hit the beaches and walk into a nightmare. Turkish Commander Mustafa Kemal has positioned his forces brilliantly. Machine guns on every cliff, artillery zeroed on every beach, clear fields of fire. The ANZACs, Australian and New Zealand troops, land at the wrong beach, find themselves trapped beneath 300-foot cliffs. Slaughtered as they try to climb. British troops at Cape Helles are cut down before they leave the boats. French colonial troops suffered devastating casualties. By the end of the first day, 20,000 Allied casualties, for virtually no ground gained. But Churchill, back in London, still believes. "Hold on," he wires. "Reinforcements coming." Months drag on. Summer turns the peninsula into hell. Dysentery, flies, heat. Disease kills as many as bullets. Every attack fails. Every position becomes a death trap. By the end, over 100,000 Allied casualties, entire generations of young Australian and New Zealand men wiped out for nothing. The fall. The newspapers turn on Churchill with savage fury. Architect of disaster, butcher of the Dardanelles, blood on his hands. Political enemies circle. His own party abandons him. May 1915, a new coalition government forms. Churchill is stripped of the Admiralty, given a meaningless position. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, a humiliation, a prison without bars. He falls into the darkest depression of his life. The Black Dog, he calls it. He has staked everything on Gallipoli. His judgment, his career, his legacy. And he has failed catastrophically. Young men, barely 20 years old, died because of his arrogance. Their mothers' letters haunt him, their faces in the newspapers. Late one night, his wife, Clementine, finds him staring out a window, tears streaming down his face. "It is over," he whispers. "Everything. Most men would break completely. Churchill is about to learn the lessons that will define his life." The Trenches, November 1915. Churchill resigns from government entirely. At 41, his political career appears finished. He requests a commission in the army, goes to fight on the Western Front, not as a general, as a lieutenant colonel commanding a battalion, from the heights of power to the mud of Flanders. Most would see this as final humiliation. Churchill sees it as a chance to understand what he never understood from his London office. He arrives at the front to command the 6th Royal Scots Fusiliers, a battalion shattered in earlier fighting. The men expect some pompous politician playing soldier. What they get shocks them. Churchill shares the trenches, eats the same rations, endures the same mud, lice, and artillery barrages. When shells fall, he does not hide. He inspects positions under fire. When soldiers are killed, he writes personally to their families. One officer later writes, "We expected a fool. Instead, we got a leader who cared more about our lives than his own reputation." Churchill is learning something he never understood before. The weight of command is not measured in strategy. It is measured in lives. Every order he gave at Gallipoli from his London office meant real men with mothers and wives and children dying on distant beaches. Now he sees war from the bottom, and it changes him forever. The lessons. Churchill spends 6 months at the front, then returns to Parliament, still disgraced, still blamed for Gallipoli. But something in him has shifted. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something deeper. Humility born from failure. Over the next 2 decades, Churchill studies Gallipoli obsessively. What went wrong? Where he failed? He identifies every mistake. overconfidence in untested plans. He assumed the Turks would collapse easily, never considered they would fight brilliantly. Lesson learned: never underestimate your enemy. Ignoring expert advice. Admirals warned the strait was too dangerous. He dismissed them. Lesson learned: listen to people with experience even when it contradicts your vision. Rushing without proper preparation. He forced the invasion before troops were ready, before intelligence was gathered. Lesson learned: speed without preparation is recklessness, doubling down on failure. When the naval attack failed, he should have stopped. Instead, he escalated. Lesson learned: know when to cut your losses, underestimating the human cost. He thought in terms of strategy, not in terms of mother's sons. Lesson learned: never forget that orders mean lives. These lessons bought with the blood of 100,000 men will save Britain 25 years later. The Second Chance, May 1940. Nazi Germany invades France. Britain faces its darkest hour. Prime Minister Chamberlain resigns. Parliament turns to the man they mocked for decades, the man responsible for Gallipoli, the 65-year-old has-been. Winston Churchill becomes Prime Minister, and this time he is different. When generals propose risky operations, he demands proof. Show me the intelligence. Show me the preparation. No more Gallipolis. When evacuation at Dunkirk seems impossible, he listens to Navy officers. They say civilian boats can help. Churchill remembers his failure to trust experts, approves immediately. 338,000 men are saved. When advisors push him to negotiate with Hitler, he refuses. But not out of arrogance, out of calculated conviction based on cold analysis of what surrender would mean. He knows because Gallipoli taught him that some fights, no matter how costly, must be fought. D-Day, June 1944. Churchill plans the invasion of Normandy. Every detail is scrutinized, every risk assessed, every contingency planned. His staff notices Churchill is obsessed with amphibious operations. One admiral asks why. Churchill's response is simple: I will never again send men onto beaches without knowing they have every possible chance of success. Gallipoli taught him, and D-Day proves he learned. The most complex amphibious operation in history. Months of planning, meticulous preparation, careful deception. It succeeds because Churchill insisted on doing everything Gallipoli taught him to do. The cost of wisdom. After the war, someone asks Churchill if he regrets Gallipoli. He thinks for a long moment. I regret every life lost, every mother's son who died because of my mistakes. That weight never leaves me. But I do not regret the lessons, because those lessons learned in blood on Turkish beaches saved Britain in 1940. Without Gallipoli, there is no Churchill of the darkest hour. Without failure, there is no wisdom. The man who would save Western civilization was forged in the fires of catastrophic defeat. Winston Churchill died in 1965. His state funeral was the largest Britain had ever seen. But perhaps the most moving tribute came from an unexpected place: Turkey. The nation Churchill attacked in 1915 honored him as one of history's great leaders, because Mustafa Kemal, the Turkish commander at Gallipoli, understood something: that Churchill's courage in attempting the impossible was worthy of respect even in defeat. There is a memorial at Gallipoli today. Words written by Kemal himself. Those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives. You are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore, rest in peace. Churchill visited once, decades later. Stood silently at the graves. Someone asked what he was thinking. I am remembering the price of my education, he said softly. Leadership is not about never failing. It is about what failure teaches you. Churchill's catastrophe at Gallipoli taught him humility, caution, the value of human life, the importance of preparation, when to fight and when to withdraw. Without Gallipoli, there is no Churchill of 1940. Without failure, there is no greatness. If this story changed how you see leadership, subscribe for more. because history is full of leaders who failed before they succeeded. And those stories matter now more than ever. The boy who was beaten at school became the butcher of Gallipoli, became the savior of Western civilization. Not despite his failures, because of them. Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never. Unless it is to convictions of honor and good sense. Even in persistence, Churchill remained wise. That is the lesson. Not blind stubbornness, but learning from failure and refusing to let it define you. The world needed Churchill at 65, not at 40. Failure prepared him for the moment that mattered most. Your failures are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of wisdom.